Cool. Yeah, welcome everyone. This is a collaborative event. We have Boston New Technology is our chapter. It's an organization here in Boston that was started about 15 years ago. I used to be just a member, one of the participants, actually pitched a previous venture in the fintech space I was involved in, at one of the showcase events. Kind of our model is there's a mix of startup showcases, educational workshops, fireside chat events, and really just here to be a resource for the early stage tech and startup community. We also just hosted a startup week Techstars Startup Weekend hackathon event this past weekend in Boston, and we do a mix of larger conference style events with um, more meetups and webinars, both in person and virtually. Um, we have a Startup Grind Boston group as well that organization started out in Silicon Valley. Primarily, we're doing fireside chat events locally as well, bringing the community together to learn from different experts. And last group on my side, and then I'll turn it over to Tanzeel to introduce his company and how they support startups through the tech development and product development journey is yeah, we have Prepare for VC is our cohort and community-based programming for early stage tech entrepreneurs to go through 12 week. We have a 12-week cohort program called our Breakthrough, entry point called our Catalyst, and other one-on-one services for um, go-to-market growth and fundraising strategy. And Tanzeel, I'll turn it over to you to give an introduction here as well.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Jason. So welcome everyone. Appreciate you guys joining in. My name is Tanzeel Rahman. I'm a co-founder of a company that's called Virtual Force. Jason and I, we went to the same grad school, Babson. That's where this company was kind of, conceived when I was doing my grad school in 2012, 2011, 2012. Babson produces a lot of founders, a lot of good startups, and the biggest problem that Babson has is that it doesn't have an engineering school. So most of the founders that were coming out of that school generally had to go and hunt or beg or find technical co-founders and have them onboarded. And there was a chicken and the egg problem all the time. You're not able to get the initial check from the investors unless you have a CTO on board or a technical co-founder. So that was a problem that I identified at that time, and I kind of addressed it. I myself came from a software engineering background, so I did help a few founder friends who were working on some brilliant ideas, but then later down developed a small team that positioned itself as an interim tech co-founding team for those startups. And then in a span of around 3 years, we were able to create some good partnerships with a few VC firms, some angel groups who would choose us as a preferred tech team for the investments that they were doing. And we were able to build some really solid startups in a span of 3 years, around 45 plus. Some died, of course, as is the case with the startup scene, early stage startups, but luckily for us, some scaled really well and went to a valuation of more than 100 million, $150 million as well, which allowed us to create this engine and help more and more startups. And then the focus and the interest kind of changed over the period of time. Now, after a journey of around 12 years, we have a team of around 300 plus product builders, software engineers, addressing the needs of startup founders, but simultaneously we're working with SMBs and large enterprises as well. And we have diversified into some more regions outside of US, in Saudi, in Middle East, and some Northern European countries as well. So yeah, that's a quick intro about me and what we stand for.
Perfect. No, and yeah, as we were talking, like, in one of our previous conversations, about some potential topics, I really liked the theme for this one in terms of not being afraid to throw out your first product or the first version of your product. A lot of times it's really easy as founders and entrepreneurs to fall in love with the idea and that version and, you know, be putting everything into getting what you've built out there to the market. But sometimes it takes taking that step back and saying, I still want to solve this problem, but this product I built isn't it, and it's not the right solution. So, yeah, how was that kind of you've worked with, dozens of companies building products for them. How was kind of those conversations gone, and what have you been able to help entrepreneurs figure
Yeah,
out when they're looking at their early versions of their
yeah.
product?
Yeah. So that was a, it was an interesting conversation that we were having, like, most of the problems that we were trying to address for the founders. And we've done our mistakes, I mean, it's been a journey. And one of the key common things that I found in most of the cases, and I think this is something that a lot of mentors would be suggesting and recommending to the founders, that you need to build fast, you need to roll it out, you need to put the product in the hands of your customer, and then iterate on top of it. This is something that that's a huge challenge for a lot of founders, because when they're trying to build their product, they get married to the idea that it has to be beautiful, it has to be really, really good, because the first impression is going to be it. Either they're going to make it with that first impression, or they're going to just lose the end customers, which in my opinion is a fallacy, right? You need to, rather than spending that additional quarter building that product, it is okay and it is fine to test the value hypothesis with a minimum viable product, and put it in the hands of the customer. Over here, I think, I'll just kind of digress and give guidance on the specific thing, which is, two things are very important for in the startup journey. Whenever you're actually building the product as an entrepreneur, we are very, very convinced that there is value, and this product is going to scale. But even for yourself and for the investor that is going to write the next check for you, it is very important to actually create an evidence. So the first evidence that we have to actually create is for the justification of the value hypothesis, right? A lot of times startup founders start focusing on the growth hypothesis first. It needs to be beautiful, the user experience really good,
نص minuto.
the user experience needs to be really good. If it's not gonna address this particular problem, the product is not going to scale. All of these things are part of the growth hypothesis. For that initial 0 to 1 stage, we need to focus more on the value hypothesis, and the initial effort on product development should definitely be going in around the validation of the value hypothesis that you're bringing in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's different ways of like a lot of time, in the startup world, we talk about the MVP, minimal viable product. And there's different what you just mentioned, the hypothesis, there's different hypotheses you're testing out. Will somebody use this product? Will somebody use it every day? Will somebody pay for this? Will somebody use it and stop using what they were using before? So, um,
Hmm.
yeah, what's your advice to founders figuring out like even what that hypothesis they should be testing is?
Yeah, and like, so I think let's connect more on this. So value hypothesis, let's say you are coming up with a product that is solving a problem for let's just pick up a hypothetical problem of a health tech where it is for XYZ sort of people with certain needs in healthcare, and you have created a solution that addresses that particular problem. So now the initial testing of the value hypothesis should be of a singular value proposition that you're bringing in, rather than making the user experience, whether your app looks similar to Instagram, whether the camera filters are as fancy as those of Snapchat and all that, those things, if they become a reason why your first customer stops using your product, then it is a very clear evidence that the problem that you're trying to solve is not a big enough problem, or your product is not solving that problem at all, right? So that's where, when we are trying to test our value hypothesis, we should be okay with testing it using a crappy product. And we don't even need to go all the way building the tech for it. In my I always try and quote that example. There was an app by the name, or I think the founder was based out of Harvard, Gym Pact. I don't know if you guys heard of it or not. It was a brilliant idea where well, we all pay for the gyms and the fitness centers, but half the time we don't go, right? Or we make a commitment on January 1st that, okay, I'm gonna just pay for the first quarter, and then just make sure that I go at least 20 days a month, and then get those calories burned, etc., etc.
Right.
But whether we go to the gym or we don't, you still paid for it, right? So this solution, or this app, came up with a very brilliant idea where it reversed it. So you would take the gym membership, but you would actually make a pact that, okay, if I go 15 days and then I commit $20. So if I go 15 days, I will, the $20 will just remain there. But if I go a day less, a 2-day less, then I'll be charged a little bit more. So it just created a large pot for the users who were actually fulfilling their commitment, and distributing the amount and rewards to the ones that were, so it was distributing the rewards to the ones that were fulfilling the commitment, and charging the customers more who were not fulfilling that commitment. So it required an app. So the end product was an app. You would go to the gym, you would check in, it would actually, stay checked in for a while. But the initial MVP that the founder used was just a simple sign-up sheet that she placed in the gyms. You would go there, you would sign up, and through that, she saw that, okay, it's the value hypothesis is working, and people are signing up, and they are staying committed. So it was a brilliant way of validating the value hypothesis. Of course, the user experience was crappy. It was a paper sheet. You have to go, you have to sign up, and then you have to log in, and then log the data on an Excel, and then calculate. But that wasn't the hypothesis that she was testing. She was just testing whether this idea that if you commit and make a pact of fulfilling certain number of days in a gym, and you would want to be charged extra for not going there, does this work or not? And that was validated through that concept, and through that initiative. Later, an app was built, and it was pretty successful during the days when I was studying in Babson. I don't recall what happened to her later, but it's a good example of how you can actually validate your hypothesis and then go from there.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, and I like that the example was not technical too. Like a lot of times the first, inclination is we have to build something and show people what it looks like. But yeah, sometimes it's, let's put up a forum, see if people sign up. Um,
Yeah.
and kind of keep it simple before you go into full development mode and validate first.
Yeah, Zappos had the similar story. We all have probably read about it. It was just a web page where you could just click there wasn't really a product to be purchased, but they were just testing whether people would just buy shoes online or not. And what they saw was, people do click. So the value hypothesis was, validated that yes, if you put up shoes online, there is a possibility that people would buy. So as a founder, you just need to be more creative about how your proof of concept or even pre-MVP is going to look like. That's one part of it. The other is which is the main topic of our talk today, is when you decide to move towards a tech product, right? Even over there, stop thinking too much about, how um, hiring the best software architect or making sure that the cybersecurity issues are addressed on day one. You need to be careful. You definitely need to take care of all of those things as soon as you have those first 100, 200 customers, right? It'll be a good problem to have. First, initially, figure out what could be a simplest way to build that solution. These days now there are so many low code, no code platforms out there that just allows you, and that allow you and give you the flexibility to create fully running products, not just a markup, using them, and put the product in the hands of the customer.
Right.
Yep.
No, I like that. Yeah, like or what is up, I've used Bubble, we've seen
How we doing?
companies using kind of even like Glide and other applications that take it from spreadsheets. Anything recommend people kind of checking out and creating the first version? Or there's obviously, Figma versions and um yeah, what do you usually recommend for that?
It'll be tough to recommend when only a single platform. Definitely depends on the on the domain and on the product,
First product.
but in in terms of the in terms of getting things out in the market now, even a lot of things can actually be built on Airtable, on on using Google Sheets platforms a little bit on top of that. Flutter has a lot of no code, low code wrappers around it, through which you can actually launch a lot of mobile apps. And then building and launching something on a certain platform is actually fine, but we need to be, as founders, clear and be understood, be clear on one thing, which is that we should be brave enough to consider that as a product that we can discard later when we are moving towards scaling. Another problem that I have faced that founders actually fall in is that when they've built the initial fast-paced MVP to roll it out in the hands of the customers, and when they get traction in, they do not find enough bandwidth or enough time or enough resources to build the version 2 completely separate. And they try to patch up version 1 in order to address the scale hypothesis as well. This is another problem that generally happens. And that's where you fall in the valley of death, because you do not allow yourself, and you actually do not address the needs of the growing customers that are coming in. And they are coming in because of some referrals, someone else used it and they like the product and they want to try it out as well. That's where your MVP 1 will actually probably fail the growth hypothesis. So this is another thing that founders should actually be prepared for, and they just need to catch that before that the value of death comes in.
Right. No, that's great recommendation. Yeah, I want to take some time now, kind of before we dive back more into some of the discussion here, see if any of the audience has questions. you can either add in the chat, raise your hand, on mic, ask a question, either if you're going through the MVP journey or have kind of a development question for Tanzeel, we can take some audience questions now as well.
While that comes in, I'll just I just remembered another example. We were building an application. It was called Study Abroad Apartment. It was an Airbnb kind of concept for student housing for students going to Europe and vice versa. And over the day, it's not just the overall product. There are bits and pieces of products that you actually think of from an MVP perspective, which you would change later. So the properties that were being uploaded over there, they definitely required an imaging engine which was easy to use, which was fast, and then which does not have a huge impact on our server costs initially. So we actually integrated a service to manage those images for the property managers and all that. From an MVP perspective, it was pretty good. And when we started to scale, and this is again, when you're actually using something like Heroku on the server end, or you go to a on-demand instance on EC2 and all that, at different stages, the costs for the infrastructure and the ease of use would be completely different. When you are in the MVP and version 1 stage, probably Heroku or something like a IaaS or PaaS would be really, really good. But as you scale, the infrastructure cost and the overall performance and all that definitely need to be readdressed, rethought, and then you need to probably plug it out and restructure everything and use a different cloud infrastructure. Same goes for the different plugins and adapters that you're using.
Great. Is there anything to avoid that makes it hard or kind of inhibits the development process if you want to, say you have a successful first version and is there anything that makes it harder to create that second version if people go a certain route?
Does it make hard? I would say, I think in my experience, many things, it's not a there isn't a rule of thumb as such. What is more important for the founders to keep a very, very sharp eye on is their product roadmap. How are they looking at the product roadmap? How refined and detailed their product roadmap is looking like, and how quickly they are updating that roadmap based on the feedback that they're getting from their initial users. I think these things are the most important, rather than being married to an initial feature set that you created that you'll roll out in 2 quarters, and not listening to the customer service team or the initial users, the way they are actually using your product, and not reassessing your product roadmap. That could be a huge mistake. So every month, generally, it depends, weeks and months, identifying it from product to product, from domain to domain, it will vary. But we tend to have a very detailed roadmap refinement meeting every month. So basically, every 2 sprints, and it's very, very important. And you should be brutal, lethal about it. You may be too inclined to a certain user story, but if the feedback out there says it's not important, just push it out, push it in the backlog, and do not bring that into the next sprint. Bring something in that will add more value from your end user perspective. And you have to not just go all the way from stage 0 to IPO, right? You have to see what will bring in that initial traction to get that next check from the investor. Stage 0 to 1 has a different journey. Stage 1 to 10 has a different journey. 1 to 100, 10 to 100 is a different journey. So your product development methodology, life cycle, and approach should take in this laddered approach, the staircase approach.
I like it. Cool. So yeah, let's think about basically, I mean, I'm gonna simplify the types of products here, but say there's or even the type of customers. Say there's two main groups of customers. You know, anytime you have a product, there's ones that you're the first technology that's solving the problem that they're buying, and then there's a group of customers where they have something existing that they want to replace with your new technology. So do you follow similar approaches on kind of the MVP testing, or do you recommend you know, kind of different approaches depending on the type of customer and how you engage with them? Yeah, I would love to hear kind of any thoughts on that space.
It'll be different. It'll be different. For the first one, where you are a new technology, and the customer is so the value hypothesis in this particular case is that problem wasn't being solved at all for that customer. So there will be more. They will not be comparing you to anything else. There'll be what they may need is a little bit education and understanding that this problem can be solved, and this is how it is going to be solved, right? And over there, the approach, as I said, over there, you just need to be more clear on how your value is being translated into the hands of the customer. Is the customer able to understand and appreciate that problem being solved? The product needs to be designed from that perspective. On the contrary, where we are coming in as a competitor, or we are probably trying to do something that the customer was used to doing, but in a different way. Maybe we're saving time, maybe we're providing a little bit more, an easier or a better user experience. Maybe we're saving them money, or whatever that is. That hypothesis needs to be clear in the mind of the founder, and the product needs to be designed such that that value proposition needs to be validated from the customer. We cannot do everything, right? On day one, we cannot just come up and build a product or compete with a product that has been out there for years. For instance, products like Facebook and all that have been there, right? But Instagram came in, Snapchat came in, even TikTok came in, and they came in with a very unique value proposition, right? Some were addressing the problem of privacy. Some were addressing the problem of, better content creation. Some were addressing the problem of having more virality created through the platform. And that even with that, they were able to, make their space, and they literally have kind of beaten a giant and pushed a giant out of that particular space. So that value proposition needs to be very, very clear. We remember, how Gmail came in, like the biggest issue at that time was space, the disk space and the space in the mailbox. And that was the only unique proposition that Gmail came up with. It used to tell the users that, you don't need to worry about deleting your emails. Just use Gmail. Do not use, Yahoo Mail or Hotmail and all that. You guys, some of you might be too young for that, but I've kind of experienced that. And that was a unique value proposition. The other values and other associated things came in a little bit later. So that unique value is very important for that initial product. That brings you the traction, And around that, you can then start building your version 2 by understanding, by listening, and by monitoring how your end users are using your product and what are the other values that they're trying to derive from your product.
No, those are great examples. And yeah, even looking at that space and saying, um, whatever market you're going into, is this something where it's fragmented and there's no leader? Is this something where there are big players, at the time, yeah, Yahoo Mail, AOL Mail, there's big players you're disrupting with a new tech, even if you are a big company, you're still thinking like, is it, how can this product serve something different than all the other players versus if you're the first one to create email, you're thinking, how can this change people's lives and, giving them this versus using regular mail for everything. So yeah, different ways of approaching the tech development and the way, you're reaching and even educate. Yeah, as you mentioned, I think the education part is big too, where um plenty of spaces, if we look at the AI space, which exploded the last year or so, AI has been around for decades. There was a big push, another kind of hype cycle, maybe 5 years ago too. But the big change, at least from my perspective, has been it's become more user friendly. So people are used to kind of testing out, they've got used to the system on either chatting with Chat GPT or um, creating images with something like Dolly or another component where if you come in now and say, I have an AI that does this, people are more open and accepting, and the market overall is um, benefiting from other companies having educated the consumers, and it's not all on this company you're building to educate everybody now. So
Yeah,
yeah, it's
yeah,
interesting
yeah,
to see those trends.
yeah, yeah. Gen AI specifically has actually changed the landscape significantly, and it has actually opened up a number of different avenues, right? Because when we and it has actually, I would say it's a paradigm shift where a lot of problems that were earlier looked at in a completely different manner are being addressed, right? There's a huge fear about a lot of jobs, a lot of things being wiped out because of Gen AI. But I look at the positive side actually, because it's more of an uplift and an upgrade for the whole human race. We are gonna be enabling ourselves in doing a more elevated work. A lot of repeat tasks, a lot of things that could have been automated one way or the other are now easy to be done through Gen AI. And more sophisticated challenges are going to be addressed. Gen AI, large language models themselves have a lot of limitations, by the way, which at the moment the AI circles definitely know and are really worried about. But the other segment is probably just giving too much credit and too much is probably just considering it to be too powerful. It has its issues, which this is where the next evolution is actually going to be on the small language models, on domain specific language models, which are being worked on, which are aggressively being worked on by a lot of different entities, by domain experts. So for healthcare, for the legal domain, for a specific research perspective, those small language models are actually being worked on the same concepts, on the same foundations that have allowed the large language models to come up. And this opens up a lot of doors for the early stage founders, by the way, because we can I think there was like a last 5-6 years, there were probably lesser, I mean, it was just considered there are lesser problems to be solved. We try to come up with an idea, and that idea, there's something happening around that already. But now it's a paradigm shift. Everything is going to be addressed one way or the other through this Gen AI approach, and it opens up, it kind of levels up the field for the new founders again. And a lot of new, I'm very excited that a lot of new products are coming up, and we'll see more and more being addressed.
No, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm excited to kind of see where where the changes go. And one thing you touched on there too in terms of specific, domain specific or more verticals. I mean, it makes sense from a kind of theoretical perspective too, that you want the information pulled just from the certain resources instead of, reviewing everything on the internet to make a medical recommendation for you. Like even manually, if you go to WebMD now and put in your symptoms, it gives you the most dramatic possibility out there versus, you probably have cold or something, and it's telling you could have a chronic illness. So getting more specific on the data that's going in and the output that it's recommending is only gonna help significantly, and allowing companies to kind of create their own models and bring in the right data sources. It's kind of an evolution here.
Yeah. So that's one part of it, but the way things were done in certain domains, they are going to be completely disrupted, I would say, especially the education sector. How education was perceived earlier. There was like there has been a legacy way of looking at education all the way from like kindergarten to primary, elementary, and then later high school, and then in college education. But the advent of Gen AI, I think that has had a major impact on this. We've started to see that, but I believe this segment, this area will be drastically disrupted, and there's definitely going to be some more enterprises or startups which will completely change on how education will be taken up and will be looked at in the next 10 to 15 years. Because if we look at how the education system is set up even right now, it wasn't like this 200 years ago. There was a completely different methodology. There was a completely different system of how education was done. They weren't degrees that you had to take. They weren't widely accepted. It was more of a mentor, a disciple and a mentor sort of a methodology earlier, and that allowed you to get enriched under a certain mentor as a disciple, and you would actually learn. People who were well versed in XYZ science were also doing innovations in something else. In the last 100 years, things became extremely specialized. Universities came in, degrees started to coming in, and then I would say the next era of people cracking that came in. The research and innovations were being done, but then those who were being educated started cracking the whole system, hacking into it, and just maybe getting those accreditation. This is what will definitely, and that's why now for large organizations, even for the technology sector, we don't look at the where you graduated from, or it definitely adds value, but it's more about, you know, what you can do, what your skill set is. Are you good enough to, you know, learn the new technologies? Are you able to, you know, scale up really, really fast with the new things that are coming in? And this is how the landscape in education is definitely going to get changed. Even right now, standardized testing still exists when you're getting into different universities. It's a complete it's a very disconnected combination of the old way of education and still new. And I think, you know, new startups will definitely disrupt this segment.
Right. Yeah, and education, I feel like has become even varied in terms of the sources. Obviously, there's kind of your primary and secondary education through colleges and universities and master's PhD programs, but then there's other if you're a startup looking to learn how to grow and scale as a startup founder, there's incubators, accelerators, there's educational conferences and events and more. There's like classes on, master class and other channels. So even that space, the ability to learn and grow in different fields has been improved through other technologies and other kind of non-technologies in terms of just organizations creating new ways of teaching people how to do things more effectively.
Yeah, and plus, so that's one part of it. But with Gen AI and knowledge being democratized, access to those knowledge sources is becoming more and more, you know, free and available, right? Earlier, like you know, in the like 70, 80 years ago, you had to travel all the way to Oxford and Cambridge and, you know, come here to the Ivy Leagues to get access to that specific professor and learn from that professor. Um, with with Gen AI and with other, you know, data sources of knowledge being democratized, that barrier is reducing, which means that more and more people, you know, anyone in probably any part of the world, if they want, they can actually get access to that knowledge source and even make use of that and learn from it.
Right. Oh, and some of it, I mean, there's always parts of an industry that are lagging too and ripe for disruption. There's a startup here in Boston that was working on basically the research libraries. There's archives that have, really historical documents and data that nobody's digitized, and the only way is you have to travel to Boston or DC or other areas to actually access that content. And they were working on kind of disrupting that and helping digitize or remotely view certain content there. So things we would just assume are digital and people have figured out, there's spaces that still exist to kind of create it into more of a modern framework and enable access for everybody.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, with that, with your with that, you know, coming back to the initial topic that we, you know, decided, but I mean, we did agree that we would want to let the flow of discussion go in any direction possible. I would just want to, you know, leave a message to the whole community that you're serving through Prepare for VC and Boston New Technology. Don't be afraid to you, you know, build something fast to validate the initial hypothesis, whether you're trying to disrupt the sector in education or you know, you're building a product for any other domain. What's more important is try to minimize the initial unique selling propositions that you're trying to come up with. Try to focus on that two or three main features that you would want to see and your end customer using and appreciating, and then giving you a blunt and open feedback whether this product is worth spending more time and money on, and then work on your version 2, which addresses the scale problem and all that. And in that regard, happy to help out, address any questions that folks may have specific to the product that they're trying to build and specific to their domain.
I really appreciate that. Yeah, if anybody does have any follow-up questions, feel free to add in the chat or on mic. And yeah, I'll be sending out a follow-up email with this too. We're gonna put this on our YouTube channel and let everybody know about the great discussion. And really thank you for all of the great advice for all of our entrepreneurs today. So yeah, I'll share a link for the YouTube probably by tomorrow. And then yeah, any other questions, happy to have you connect with Tanzeel directly, or we can make an introduction, and yeah, I'll send that follow-up email to everybody.
Yeah, definitely, and happy to be engaged. As I said, earlier, we have diversified, and we are working with a lot of large enterprises, some government entities as well, but still a lot of interesting work still comes in from the startups. So I try and make myself available for that particular segment. That's the segment that most of our engineering team members are very excited and passionate about whenever a new startup, is onboarded into our portfolio. So definitely happy to address any questions, challenges that you might think we can help you with. Jason will share the contact details. Take it from there.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks again, and thanks everyone for jumping in and joining us today.